Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.13 ADC tier list. So if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. This is still the 3-week patch, so it is going to be slightly longer. Obviously, this is the second week of the patch. There are a couple of changes which I do want to cover in this tier list. Primarily the two pro-focus ones. Obviously, Kalista has been nerfed because of her competitive presence. Primarily just the lethality variant, which was really picking up quite a bit. And in Varus's case, also his lethality build was really overperforming. They're trying to push him towards on-hit with some adjustments, and let's cover the changes. So to begin with, the D tier is going to consist of two champions now. Corki, really fallen out of favour in the bot lane, obviously primarily seen in competitive in the mid lane. Really not something I'd still recommend for like solo queue for like the lower 95%. Once you hit those higher ranks, if you can find those situations where most of the time the situations will arise where you do want to play this pick, running something like an AP jungler, you're looking to suppress the enemy mid laner and then roam onto sides. In bot lane, you tend to just be too short range, you're very early game skewed. If you're not able to get those advantages, it's really hard to translate anything into a lead, and then you can really get punished by obviously your Caitlyn's and long range marksmen later on into the game, which can kind of just outrange you and really punish you if you ever want to try and step up. You kind of have to play like an assassin later on, where you are looking for those angles to W in, and then look for a burst potential. The other champion with D tier is going to be Kalista. Kalista's not so much of a D tier pick as Corki is. Like, Corki is very solidified here. Kalista's kind of fringe. If you can play the pick well, you can still definitely find a level of success, but you are really needing to be proficient on the pick. If you're not getting the pairings, like your Renata, stuff like this, and you're not getting and you're not like piloting the pick well, you'll just get punished by so many different things, and you'll really feel it. It's why I'd recommend avoiding it unless you do play the champion. Moving on to the C tier, Varus is going to be here. So Varus's lethality variant will be in the D tier. Like, I believe that build is primarily just dead. 25% of Varus players are still going it at the moment. It's very much something you should avoid. If you are falling into that trap, you will definitely be losing more games at the moment. For on hit, it's looking like Kraken Slayer is actually his best first item. It's got a lower sample size, so it definitely needs more looking into, but as an item, it doesn't have the crit, which was kind of a wasted stat on it beforehand, and now it kind of gives him more of the tools which he wants, like continuous chain, like on hit damage, combined with nice stat line. It should be a good item for him. Bork obviously is something you can opt into high health stackers. It can definitely find a lot of power there, and then going down like your Ginsu's, your Terminus, stuff like that can all be a lot more beneficial. I imagine he will get buffed in 14.15 as he is not getting buffed in 14.14, but if he continues to see a level of pro play, maybe not. That could definitely be a concern. Obviously, Varus, his ult is a very pro play skewed tool, gives him great pick potential. He has good lane power, which can also be a quite scary competitive tool, so he's going to be in the C tier for my solo queue tier list. This is obviously targeted towards mid and low elo. I will very much emphasize that, as a lot of people seem to think that like Corki, Tristana, LeBlanc in the mid lane in the last video very much should be higher, which I agree. In elite play makes a lot of sense. These three champions definitely have a lot more power there, but for the average player, these picks are something which I would recommend avoiding. In like Corki's case, the other two are a lot better for the average player, but not like top of the tier list. You can find a lot more success playing easier champions, which often have better tools suited for your elo. Aphelios is going to also be with my C tier. Obviously, Aphelios, relatively hard to pilot champion. Obviously, having so many different weapon rotations can be quite hard to learn. But if you do, once again, put the games in, you can definitely find success in this pick. He feels pretty good to play at the moment. He is getting buffed in 14.14 as well, so if you do want to like hop on and play the champion, learn him, but there's definitely an opportunity for that. But for the average player, if you're just putting a couple of games in, you're going to struggle to find the level of success needed. He is going to be within my C tier. Yasuo. So Yasuo's finding a bit more success now. Obviously, people have started moving towards the fleet, which is good. It's been a slow move. Like, people have definitely been very delayed on like hovering on PTA and Conqueror for a bit, when fleet has clearly been his best in the slot. Obviously, I believe in 14.15 they are adjusting fleet, which could definitely have some implications here for when that does arise. But for the moment, he's a high C tier pick. You can definitely make him function in the bot lane, especially if you do put the games into him. He just isn't finding the same level of success as a lot of the other marksmen. He definitely prefers to come in as like a counter pick option. Smolder, also going with my C tier. Smolder by no means is bad. You can definitely find success on this pick. If you play around like the likes of Braum and good synergies, there's definitely power there. Other than that, if you itemize him correctly, skipping out on like bait items, you don't really want to be opting into like these AP options anymore. He's had a lot of crit ratios buffed on his kit, which definitely does help with like sort of like an RFC pickup, LDR pickup, stuff like this. And he's definitely a high C tier option as well. Once again, kind of outshined by a lot of the other marksman pool at the moment. Having to wait so long to kind of get your execute threshold online can definitely feel quite punishing, but you're not as punished in low elo, so you could definitely make an argument to like rise him up into the B tier. Senna probably sits at the bottom of the C tier. Senna as an ADC option is really bad at the moment. She just doesn't do a good amount of damage. It makes her really reliant on synergies. If you're not pairing her with the right things, this champion is really bad. She is obviously reliant a bit on frontline. If anything, I'd just recommend playing her as a support, finding someone who can play Tahm Kench and just playing around that. It allows you to really play quite aggressive on this pick. Obviously, her itemization has been nerfed continuously. Opportunity, Youmu's, Umbral have all been nerfed for ranged champions at this point. I believe Opportunity is still her best first item option, and then you can kind of just opt into like raw crit builds, but Edge is also something you can also opt into. But yeah, Senna really underperforming at the moment, going to be at the bottom of my C tier. Moving on to the B tier, so Hui makes his reappearance. Honestly, I shouldn't have removed Hui. I believe Hui is actually a decent bot laner, has been for a while. He just wasn't really finding the popularity. He's definitely swiped a bit more as of recent as like a viable bot laner, and people have kind of like looked at it. For example, Karthus, who was a viable bot laner, has actually played less than Cassiopeia at the moment, which is really funny. But yeah, in Hui's case, he's a solid B2 option. If you put the games in, you can definitely find increasing success. He tends to be harder to pilot. Once again, has 9 abilities, which is definitely something that can take a bit of time to get your head around. Samira, you could probably make an argument to drop Samira down to the C tier, and definitely have like basis for it. This champion's definitely struggled a lot more since her core items got nerfed, both Collector and IE, towards the beginning of this split, combined with her receiving some direct nerfs. Definitely hasn't been finding as much success since then. Obviously is benefiting a bit from like the engaged supports we're seeing a lot of at the moment. She is really reliant on engaged supports, doesn't really want enchanters as much as some of the other ADC options. Is relying on like synergies with her passive, stuff like that. For the moment, I'm going to leave her at the bottom of the B tier, but yeah, there's definitely an argument to drop her down to the C tier. Xayah is going to be moving up to the B tier. So Xayah received some decent buffs in this patch towards her E. It definitely helped with the fact that she lost Quick Blades from last split. Flicker Blades aren't as great as an alternative for her. They definitely do work, but yeah, gaining IE didn't really make up for the power loss of last split. They've buffed her up. She's now a solid B tier option. Draven, I'm going to actually re-add to the B tier. So Draven, I dropped down to a C tier. His champion is very feast or famine. If you can't pilot the pick well, I'd recommend avoiding it. It's very reliant on playing very aggro early on into the game, translating those leads and then closing out early. If you don't have the skill set for that, then you'll get punished, and he's a B tier option, but once again, kind of like Samira, if you don't really push the champion to its limit, you'll really struggle compared to some of the other options in the bot lane as they do fall off. Moving on, we have Vayne. So Vayne is in an alright spot. Obviously, you can go the on-hit variation. I believe the on-hit variation is just primarily what people go at this point. There were some other variations in previous split and like kind of going to the split, but obviously the loss of Sheen on Essence Reaver has definitely hurt those builds. She was quite reliant on that, obviously, for the Q reset. I believe Q max for just the on-hit variations is primarily what people go. I haven't done a lot of digging into Vayne, but like for Vayne top, that was something you could kind of do. For Vayne bot, it looks to be the same. Obviously, Bork tends to be a pretty solid first item. I believe Kraken Slayer is also not a bad item, and a lot of these on-hit marksmen is definitely something you can opt into. And then Ginsu's Terminus tends to be pretty standard on-hit variation, kind of akin to Cogmore. That's something you can opt in. I mean, it's pretty standard core variation. And then the likes of a Jack Show, if you're looking for durability. GA on Vayne can also be quite a nice defensive option. Wits End, not so valuable for like its tenacity, but like obviously the magic resist and the on-hit damage can be quite nice, especially if you're going down an on-hit variation, which with Ginsu's. Vayne, solid B2 option. Sivir, also going to be here. I believe Sivir's a great pick if you're looking for something relatively simple to play with a pretty hard to punish laning phase. Obviously, the wave clear of both static and her W can be quite oppressive to play against. I believe First Strike is still probably her best keystone over PTA. Obviously, it got nerfed and people were kind of moving off of it, but there's still a level of success if you are able to guarantee perma procking First Strike, then there's a lot of gold to be made there. Fleet, PTA, obviously, other options you can kind of opt into, but there is definitely strength to the build. Tristana also going to be here. Tristana's not performing as well in the bot lane as in the mid lane. Obviously, mid lane Tristana very much dominating competitive and high elite play at the moment. For bot lane, with the loss of Halo Blades, definitely hard here. It gave her a lot more burst potential. We did nerf it for ranged champions, so it isn't quite as strong as like some of your other options, your fleets, your PTAs. And yeah, she can definitely feel it a bit. She's like a solid, she's like a low mid B tier option now. Lucian, obviously, if you pair him with the correct things, you can definitely find a lot of success. Nami isn't so needed anymore. Obviously, Nami's pretty strong at the moment, so it can definitely feel quite a loss if you don't have this champion paired with a Nami. But there are definitely other things which can function quite nicely with this champion. You're not so hard bound to it as you once were. And yeah, Lucian, solid beta option. Ziggs and Veigar are my AP options for the beta. Both these picks obviously have been nerfed and adjusted around bot lane in the past. They now kind of sit as like very average AP bot lane picks. I do have other recommendations if you're looking for things here, but you can definitely find a success on these picks. In Ziggs' case, I believe they're trying to adjust him back towards mid lane, and in Veigar's case, they kind of already have. Veigar is a better mid laner than a bot laner at this point, which is good to see. Obviously, people didn't really enjoy playing Veigar APC, and yeah, in mid lane Veigar definitely a lot more inclusive in the player base which want to pick this champion. And then Ezreal tends to be a pretty hard to pilot pick. If you can push him to his limits, then you can find huge amounts of success. Obviously, Dragda is a great example of what this champion can be if really played to its best. Someone I would definitely recommend watching. His build's in a pretty good spot now, but like he's been buffed up to kind of like support it. Obviously Trinity tends to be is his core now, and then Manamune, and then you can kind of go into some of the other options. I know some people like to opt into Shojin BT. There's kind of variants there. And yeah, he's a solid B tier pick. Moving on to the A tier, we have MF. So MF is moved from the C tier to the A tier. She got buffed this patch. The movement speed increase on her W combined with the base AD going up has definitely opened up a lot of options for her. Obviously, engage supports really nice pairing, like make for really nice pairings with her, allow her to maintain like an ult onto a target if the CC follow-up is there. And combined with this, her builds definitely work quite nicely now. Like for BTs, the Essence Reavers, IE, stuff like that. You can kind of like build around a pretty strong, heavy AD core, and with Xerxes, you can kind of have the attack speed to kind of support it. I know some people like the Conquer variation. There's definitely a level of success there. Obviously, PTA tends to be pretty standard, but yeah, Conquer definitely has some kind of variation which you can opt into. And yeah, she's a good A tier pick, very simple to play, something I would definitely recommend picking it up again. Kai'Sa is also going to my A tier, so Kai'Sa, is once again the most popular ADC in the game. She is definitely finding a lot of success. Obviously, your standard build tends to be your static, Ginsu, Nasha variant, and then like you're picking up Zonya, Rabadon, stuff like that, and you can play quite nicely as like a semi all-in artillery mage. And that is pretty successful at the moment. Not quite as easy to play as some of the other picks. Obviously, her short range early on into the game, not being as it just leaves her open to punish, like a level of punish, and certain pairings can feel quite rough if you pair Kai'Sa with. Realistically, if you can play her pick well, then yes, she is like an S tier champion. I'm gonna leave her in the A tier at the moment. People tend to not take the right builds in the right circumstances, and I can definitely punish the pick. But if you are very proficient at it, I recommend Reptile, honestly, if you're looking for someone who's really good at Kai'Sa. She's a really good champion if you can, pilot the pick well. Nyla, obviously, really strong with the Taric, stuff like that. That tends to be pretty much what she's like built around, her like very specific pairings. Taric, obviously, the one which comes to mind, that like that pairing is really impressive if you are able to pilot both the picks well. And her build's a bit better. She got buffed, and it did definitely help. Obviously, Collector IE tends to be pretty standard on her at this point. And yeah, she's a good A tier option. Shilbo, BT, LDR, like your late game items, all pretty standard. She's a good A tier pick. Cogmore, obviously, this is just on her variation. You don't really have much kind of leeway around what else you can go on Cogmore at the moment. He's pretty bound to PTA. Obviously, I believe Bork and Ginsu's make for like just your standard 2-item core. Obviously, once again, Kraken said does find a level of success. It's kind of underbuilt on a lot of these champions when it can definitely be a lot more of a frequent pickup. And then yeah, Bork, Ginsu, Runans, Terminus, Jackshow. You're durable, you output a lot of damage. Obviously, your maximum true health maximum magic damage on your W provides a lot of value there, and he's in a great spot at the moment. A great A tier pick. Twitch is also going to be my A tier, so Twitch isn't as strong as he was last split. He did receive some nerfs, obviously towards his early game and towards his ultimate, but has gone down by a flat 10 AD. But he can definitely find success still. Obviously, he tends to be a pretty heavily one-tricked champion. AD build's still pretty standard. Your Bork, your Runans, your IE. Don't tend to see as much AP Twitch these days. I believe the build has kind of fallen out of favor. Obviously, they nerfed one of his AP ratios, but overall the itemization just isn't there as much. I believe if you're going AP Twitch, you're playing the likes of Nasha into Rabadon and just playing on a lot of heavy heavy AP. Obviously, losing Crown from previous season has definitely hurt here, as that tend to be his core mythic option. Twitch, solid A tier pick. Caitlyn, obviously now that we're kind of pushed away from that one-shot Caitlyn meta where her traps had an absurd AD ratio and she gained some level of attack speed growth, she's definitely a more well-rounded marksman now, but she lost a bit of power. She now sits in mid A tier. The champion's still really good. Like, if you can pilot the pick well, get certain pairings and like get the trap combos down, but yeah, the champion's still in a great spot. You can really easily chain one-shot someone with like double headshot. And late game, you can still just one-shot targets. Like, that isn't gone to like as much of a degree. When you are full build with like BT last slot, you still do a lot of damage, and that can be quite oppressive to play against. Obviously, your mid-game tends to lull compared to other marksmen. You're more focused around your long-range early-game oppressiveness and your late-game one-shot kind of target accessibility. Caitlyn, still a good A-tier option. Zeri, obviously one of the go-to elite picks at the moment. Still finds good success in average play. Like, the pick is still in a decent spot for the average person. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up nerfing it if it does take over competitive relatively soon. Obviously with some of these other nerfs coming in. And yeah, she's a good A tier pick. Static Shiv tends to be your first item. Fleet tends to be your core keystone unless you are fighting. Then I do see some Conqueror variations, but I'm not too sold on that as being like a pretty standard option for her. If you want just like standard, then yeah, Fleet, Static, and then you're just going like your standard crit variations, and she's in a great spot at the moment. A great A tier pick. Swain, Ash, and Karthus will wrap up the A tier. So Ash obviously got nerfed in 14.12. She's not as she doesn't do as much damage now, and you can definitely feel it. Obviously, Ash primarily just picked for her utility, her ease of play, her setup, all very valuable tools. Her E can be a really obnoxious vision tool, allows you to really get away with not being punished in the bot lane if you are scouting correctly and keeping tabs on the jungler. On top of this, her build's still pretty solid. I believe it's just the Kraken Slayer variation into standard crit. Obviously, Phantom, really nice item for her. She really values movement speed, being a pretty slow baseline marksman. On top of this, IE, LDR, BT, all really solid options for her. She's a great A-tier pick. In Swain's case, still a great frontline AP mage option. There's a lot of power to this pick, especially if you pair it with the right things, which allow you to maintain your ult uptime, whether it's because they can hold the target in or drag the target towards you. Swain, not as easy to pilot early on to the game. Obviously, you can be punished by some of the long-range marksmen. You have relatively long CDs. If you can't get onto a target with your E, that can feel pretty bad. But he's still a solid A tier pick. In Karthus' case, he drops from S to A tier. He has been nerfed again, and you can definitely feel the Q damage not being as high, but there's still a huge amount of power to this pick. Obviously, the global ult is still incredibly valuable. He still really values items like Blackfire, Leandry, Malignance. All these items work great on him. And then like Rabadon, Crypt Bloom, Void. I believe Void stuff actually tends to be pretty cool on this pick. And yeah, he's a great A tier option. Moving on to the S tier, so we have 4 champions here. We have Seraphine, which I would really recommend people learn. Still really under the radar at the moment as a really good APC. Obviously, finding a level of success in support and mid lane. For mid lane, if you want to watch someone, recommend Q-Pick. He is a very good Seraphine player. I don't really know anyone who plays APC Seraphine, but there is definitely a level of success to it, and it's something I would recommend at the moment. Support Seraphine. Also, don't really have anyone which comes to mind, but is finding a bit of success, and Seraphine is a good S tier option. Brand has obviously been finding success in the bot lane for a while. This is no secret at this point. Pairings with Nami is incredibly obnoxious. Like, Nami Brand as a pairing is one of the best, if not just straight up the best pairing in the game. On top of this, he can still function with other marksmen. He's got an oppressive early game. His team fighting is very oppressive. He struggles to run out of mana. They obviously did kind of placebo nerf that down this patch. The E1 you will feel that a bit more, obviously, if you do end up like maxing E second. It's probably now going to go to your third max guarantee. But yeah, he's a great S tier option, does so much damage, it's great team fighting, great wave clear, and yeah, Brand, great S tier pick. And Jhin and Jinx are going to make up the rest of the S tier. I personally don't like Jhin as a champion. Well, okay, I like Jhin as obviously thematically, but that's not the point. The point is of just the champion generalistically. I believe that Jhin has to be unfair if he's ever strong because of the way his kit functions. Obviously, he has 4 bullets, so he is prohibited to 4 shots and then has windows of punishability. On top of this, he also has the problem where he struggles to kill assassins. Obviously, slow attack speed can definitely feel quite punishing there, unless he is massively fed, but obviously he can kind of warp the matchup. Tanks can also be really punishing for Jhin to play against. If you don't have armor pen, then he will really struggle to get through frontline, being very much reliant around slow large damage autos, which it leaves him very punishable, and he can struggle into artillery as well. Like, there's loads of champions which can really punish him, and in his current state, Jhin is kind of unfair. Like, he just has a lot of everything going for him. Like, his damage is once again pretty good. They've kind of buffed that up with like the ultimate, his passive being a bit better. On top of this, we've also seen his Q get buffed on the AD ratio, making his wave clear a bit obnoxious. On top of this, W snare duration has also been increased in like recent patches. Not in recent patches, but like just over like the last 2 years kind of thing. And in kind of this circumstance, it's made Jhin just generalistically a really good champion with like really good tools, even if he is slightly prohibited by the way his attack pattern is. So yeah, it creates an interesting dynamic. Anyway, I'm waffling. Jhin in a great spot at the moment. IE collector, RFC, LDR, great for item core, and then you can pick up something like a BT. He has so much AD there. I'd recommend going Fleet over Dark Harvest if you're just looking for consistency, and then Celerity and the other one, Gathering Storm, both really good options on him. He's a great S tier pick. And then in Jinx's case, I've kind of dropped her down from the S plus to the S tier. I don't believe she stands out quite as much as she once did in the bot lane, but she's still a really good champion. If you're looking for just consistent snowballing and decent success, then Jinx is a great go-to marksman. She's kind of like Sivir, but like has more accessible damage output, obviously has a bit more, to a degree, a bit more range, just as like baseline autos. Obviously abilities can kind of warp that, but even then, Jinx with W and R has good range. Her team fighting is incredibly oppressive to play against, and if you have Peel when this champion is very strong, if you don't have Peel, you will get punished for it, because obviously she's a low mobility marksman until she gets excited, which is reliant on a takedown. Yeah, those are my thoughts. If you're looking for good ADC options, then Jinx and Jhin, I would recommend as the default picks. Ashe, MF, obviously relatively simple to play if you're looking for something pretty easy and pretty like good early pickups. And then Brand, Seraphine make for great AP options at the moment. Seraphine for a bit more util, Brand for a good AP option. Those are my thoughts for the mid and low elo bot lane tier list. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next one. Goodbye.